Irene had always been a woman of patience and quiet strength, the kind of mother who gave her all without asking for much in return, yet lately, a restless feeling had settled in her heart. Her son, Ethan, had grown into a young man of 22, quiet, reserved, and often lost in his own world, leaving her both proud and anxious at the same time. Growing up, Ethan had always been a thoughtful child, the one who observed more than spoke, who preferred sketching in notebooks or writing little notes to himself rather than sharing his thoughts aloud, and while Irene had admired his creativity, she had also worried about his future. His college years had been a challenge. He seemed uninterested in conventional paths, avoiding jobs or internships that might give him a clear direction, and Irene had tried gently to guide him, only to be met with polite, distant replies that left her feeling helpless at times. For months now, the silence between them had grown heavier, a quiet tension that sat in the corners of their home, making every unanswered text or skipped call feel like a small rejection. She often sat in her kitchen in the evenings, tea in hand, staring out the rain-streaked window, remembering little moments from Ethan's childhood, how he had insisted on making her breakfast when he was just 8, how he would sneak out of his room at night to leave her hand-drawn cards on her pillow, and how, despite his reserved nature, he had always had a heart full of warmth, even if he hid it behind quiet walls. That Friday evening, the rain tapped against the window with a rhythmic insistence, and Irene felt a pang of loneliness that she couldn't shake. She had prepared herself for another quiet evening, perhaps another week without hearing from Ethan, convinced that he had grown too busy or too indifferent to think of her, but then the familiar sound of keys jingling at the door made her heart skip a beat, and she realized that the small hope she had tried to ignore had been waiting for this exact moment. Ethan entered, his coat damp from the rain, hair sticking to his forehead, carrying something carefully wrapped in brown paper, and Irene felt a mix of curiosity and apprehension. After all, she had learned over the years that when Ethan held something close to his chest, it usually meant it was deeply important to him. She watched silently as he placed the parcel on the kitchen table, his hands lingering on the wrapping as if nervous about her reaction. "Open it," he said softly, and the tone of his voice carried a vulnerability she had almost forgotten existed, a reminder that beneath the quiet exterior was a young man capable of deep feeling and care. Her fingers trembled slightly as she tore away the paper, revealing a beautifully hand-bound journal, its leather cover soft yet elegant, embossed with her initials in gold. She felt her breath catch in her throat, unable to hide the surge of emotion that welled up unexpectedly. Inside, the first page bore a note in Ethan's neat handwriting, "For Mom, so you can see the world through my eyes." Irene's eyes misted as she traced the words with her fingers, realizing that this was more than a simple gift, it was a bridge, a way for her son to reach out to her heart after years of distance. She flipped the pages slowly, discovering sketches of places they had been together, moments she had almost forgotten, like the way he had drawn the crooked lamp in their living room exactly as it had been when she used to read to him at night, or the small puddles from rainy days they had splashed through, captured with delicate lines and tiny details that only he would notice. Each page was a revelation, a glimpse into the depths of Ethan's mind and soul, filled not just with art but with snippets of his thoughts and reflections, letters that spoke of gratitude, love, and memories she had never known he cherished. One letter, in particular, caught her attention. It was carefully folded, marked with a tiny heart, titled simply, "Mom, I need you to know." Her hand shook as she opened it, heart pounding with anticipation, unsure whether she was about to discover a confession, a secret, or just another piece of his creativity, but knowing instinctively that whatever was inside would change the way she saw him forever. Ethan's gaze met hers briefly, a mixture of hope and nervousness flickering in his eyes, and Irene realized that in that moment, the years of distance, of quiet misunderstandings, and of low expectations were about to be rewritten. She had always assumed that her son was reserved, that his silence meant disinterest, that his dreams were too obscure for her to ever fully understand, yet here he was, offering her a window into his world, an intimate and heartfelt gift that left her both stunned and profoundly moved. The journal was filled with sketches, letters, and reflections that painted a portrait of a young man who had been quietly nurturing his talents, his emotions, and his love for his mother, all in secret, waiting for the right moment to share them. Irene realized that this was more than art, it was a form of connection, a bridge across years of quiet, an unspoken promise that no matter how distant he seemed, he had always carried her in his heart. Her eyes traced the pages, lingering on lines that spoke of longing, of missed conversations, of small joys and regrets, and she felt a lump in her throat, overwhelmed by the depth of emotion she was witnessing. Each page revealed layers of Ethan she had never fully understood, the young man who noticed the small things, who remembered the details of their life together, who could express love, gratitude, and reflection with such elegance that it brought tears to her eyes. As the rain continued to fall outside, Irene felt a quiet shift in her heart, a soft opening, a willingness to listen, to see, and to connect in ways she hadn't allowed herself in years. She had walked into the evening expecting nothing, bracing herself for another silent night, but instead, her son had surprised her in the most profound way, revealing a depth of thought, feeling, and artistry that left her speechless. And yet, as she turned the last few pages, she realized that this was only the beginning. Ethan's gift was not just a collection of sketches and letters but a promise, a gentle whisper that he had more to share, more to reveal, and that the bond between mother and son was about to enter a new, richer, and more emotional chapter. Irene sat back, the journal resting on her lap, and felt tears sliding down her cheeks, a mixture of pride, love, and awe flooding her heart, knowing that the young man she had thought she understood was far more remarkable than she had ever imagined. Her mind raced with questions, anticipation, and excitement for what would come next, and she realized that the years of assumptions and low expectations had been completely shattered in a single evening. Ethan had surprised her, not with grand gestures or words, but with the quiet honesty of his heart, the beauty of his art, and the depth of his love, and Irene knew, in that instant, that her life, and their relationship, was about to be transformed in ways she had never thought possible, leaving her with a profound sense of wonder and anticipation for the journey that lay ahead. The next morning, Irene woke up with a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness, the journal still resting on the kitchen table, its presence a quiet reminder that her son, Ethan, had more of himself to share than she had ever realized, and she couldn't wait to dive back into the pages to see what else he had been keeping hidden all these years. She brewed her coffee and sat by the window, the sunlight breaking gently through the clouds, casting a warm glow on the notebook in front of her, and as she opened it, she discovered that the sketches and letters were only the beginning of Ethan's secret world. There were pages filled with lyrics, words strung together in lines that sang of longing, admiration, and subtle romance, a depth of emotion that took her breath away because it revealed not only his talent but his sensitivity and his ability to see the beauty in everyday moments that she had never considered significant. The words spoke of things she had always hoped to hear but never thought he would express: appreciation for quiet evenings, the way she smiled when she thought no one was watching, the comfort of their small routines, and even the sadness of moments when they had drifted apart, all painted with honesty and tenderness that moved her in ways she hadn't expected. Each line was carefully written, deliberate, and full of emotion, showing a side of Ethan that had been hidden behind his calm and sometimes aloof exterior, and Irene realized that her assumptions about him had been completely wrong. He was not indifferent or lost, he had simply been waiting for the right way and the right time to share himself. She could feel his presence in every word, every carefully drawn sketch, every note of thoughtfulness, and a deep pride began to swell in her chest, mixed with a quiet awe at the creativity and emotional intelligence of her son, who had quietly grown into a remarkable young man under her very eyes, even if she hadn't fully noticed it before. When Ethan returned from his walk, dripping from the light drizzle outside and brushing wet strands of hair from his forehead, Irene felt a flutter of anticipation, unsure how to begin a conversation that could express the overwhelming emotions she was experiencing, and when she finally looked up and asked, These are amazing, Ethan. Where did you learn to write like this?" Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the depth of her feelings, and she noticed the subtle shift in his expression, a mix of relief, shyness, and pride that made her heart ache with love. Ethan looked down for a moment, then met her gaze, his eyes shining with vulnerability, and he admitted softly, "I've been writing for a long time. I didn't think it mattered. I never thought you'd care," and in that instant, Irene realized that all the years she had felt disconnected were simply years when he had been quietly preparing to share the most personal parts of himself with her, and now that he had chosen to trust her, the bond between them felt fragile, delicate, and infinitely precious. She reached across the table and touched his hand gently, a silent reassurance that she had always cared, that she was ready to understand, and that his fears of rejection were unfounded, and for a moment, they simply sat there, mother and son, hands linked, hearts open, in a quiet space that felt sacred, a moment suspended in time where past misunderstandings melted away and were replaced by understanding and connection. Then Ethan hesitated, shifting slightly in his chair, and with a quiet breath, he said, "There's more. I've been working on a small music project. I wanted to share it with you first," and Irene's pulse quickened because she knew from his tone that this was not just casual news, it was an invitation, a vulnerable gesture of trust, and her mind raced with questions and excitement, imagining what it might be, what kind of music he had created, and how deeply personal it might be. That evening, when Ethan settled at the piano in their living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting long shadows across the walls, Irene felt a mix of nervous anticipation and pride, and as his fingers touched the keys, filling the room with a melody that was both tender and hauntingly beautiful, she realized that what she was hearing was not merely music but a story, a heartfelt narrative that wove together his emotions, his reflections, and his quiet longing, and every note seemed to speak directly to her heart. The lyrics he sang were poetic, expressing themes of love, loss, hope, and connection in a way that was sophisticated yet deeply personal, revealing not only his talent but also the care with which he had crafted every word, every chord, every pause, and Irene felt tears forming as she listened, overwhelmed by the realization that her son had been holding this secret talent all along, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal it. She could see the concentration on his face, the way he lost himself in the music, and she felt both admiration and awe, knowing that the shy, reserved young man she had sometimes worried about was capable of such depth, such emotional resonance, and such beauty in expression, and her heart swelled with pride that transcended words. As the last notes lingered in the quiet room, Irene sat in stunned silence, absorbing the experience, feeling a profound connection that went beyond parent and child, a recognition of shared humanity and the power of creativity to bridge gaps that words alone could not. Ethan looked at her then, cheeks flushed, eyes shining, and asked in a tentative voice, "Did you like it?" And Irene reached out, embracing him tightly, unable to find words that could convey the mixture of love, pride, and amazement she felt, holding him close and whispering, "I loved it, more than words can say. I had zero expectations, Ethan, but you've surprised me in a way I'll never forget." His smile in response was tentative but full of relief, a mixture of joy and vulnerability, and in that moment, Irene knew that something fundamental had shifted between them, the walls of silence, misunderstanding, and distance had begun to crumble, replaced by a fragile but real bridge of trust and emotional intimacy. The evening stretched into night as they talked quietly, Ethan sharing stories about how he had written each song, each lyric, each chord, and Irene listening with wonder, occasionally asking questions, occasionally pausing to absorb the beauty and honesty of his words, and for the first time, she felt like she was truly seeing her son, really understanding him, and recognizing the talent, sensitivity, and depth of feeling that had always been there but hidden from view. The experience left Irene with a mix of emotions, pride in his talent, gratitude that he trusted her, excitement for what the future might hold, and a gentle awe at the fact that this quiet young man had been cultivating such an incredible gift all along, a gift he was now choosing to share with the world and, first and foremost, with her. As the night ended, Ethan placed the journal back on the table, a quiet statement that their journey of sharing and discovery was ongoing, and Irene felt a sense of anticipation for the days to come, knowing that this was only the beginning of a deeper understanding, a closer bond, and a shared path of creativity, emotion, and love, one that would continue to surprise, delight, and move her in ways she had never imagined, leaving her heart open and ready for the next chapter of their extraordinary connection. The night of the showcase arrived, and Irene felt a swirl of emotions she hadn't expected, excitement, nervousness, pride, and a touch of fear that her expectations might fall short, but she knew deep down that Ethan had worked hard for this moment and that whatever happened, it would be a milestone in their relationship and in his life. The theater was small, intimate, with warm golden lights casting a glow over the polished wooden floor and rows of seats that seemed both welcoming and intimidating, and as she walked in, the buzz of quiet conversation and soft footsteps filled the air, making her heart race with anticipation, each step toward her seat a reminder that she was about to witness something extraordinary. When the lights dimmed and the murmurs subsided, Irene's gaze found Ethan behind the curtain, adjusting his notes, taking deep breaths, and running his fingers over the piano keys, his face a mixture of concentration, nerves, and a quiet confidence that made her chest swell with pride, realizing that this was the culmination of months of secret effort, practice, and emotional honesty he had poured into his music, all of which had been hidden behind the calm, reserved exterior she had grown used to. The host introduced him, and as Ethan stepped onto the stage, Irene felt her heart leap. The transformation was remarkable. He carried himself with poise and a presence she had never seen at home, a blend of youthful vulnerability and emerging strength that made her see him in an entirely new light, and she realized that the shy boy who had sometimes seemed lost had become a young man capable of commanding attention with authenticity, sincerity, and undeniable talent. When he began to play, the first notes of the piano filled the room like a gentle breeze, soft yet powerful, and as the lyrics flowed, Irene was captivated not just by the music but by the story it told, a narrative of love, longing, family, and personal growth that seemed to mirror their own journey, capturing emotions she hadn't realized were unspoken but had always lingered in the quiet spaces between them, and with every chord and every carefully chosen word, she felt herself pulled into his world, seeing through his eyes and feeling the depth of his heart in a way that was both overwhelming and exhilarating. The lyrics spoke of small, intimate moments, memories of laughter and shared glances, of quiet support and gentle care, painting a picture of love and connection that transcended typical performance, turning the stage into a window through which Irene could witness her son's soul, and she couldn't help but notice the subtle gestures, the way he paused at certain words, the way his eyes glimmered with emotion, and the way his fingers danced across the keys with precision, elegance, and raw feeling, all combining to create a performance that was at once personal and universally moving. Around her, the audience was silent, caught in the spell of his music, and Irene felt tears slip down her cheeks as she realized that Ethan had managed to communicate with the world, and with her, in a way that words alone could never have achieved, conveying his love, gratitude, and the complexity of his emotions in a language that was uniquely his own, beautiful, and unrepeatable. By the time he reached the final notes, the room was still, the soft echo of the piano lingering in the air, and then, almost suddenly, applause erupted, warm, enthusiastic, and heartfelt, but Irene's attention remained fixed solely on Ethan, noticing the mixture of relief, pride, and shyness that crossed his face, feeling a profound connection and a rush of maternal pride unlike anything she had experienced before, knowing that she had witnessed something far greater than a simple performance. She had witnessed a revelation, a true unveiling of her son's heart and talent. After the applause died down, Ethan hurried backstage, cheeks flushed, a mixture of excitement and nervousness visible in every gesture, and he turned to her, asking softly, "Did you like it?" with a vulnerability that made her ache with love and pride at once. She reached out and pulled him into a tight embrace, holding him as if she could convey all her emotions through the act itself, whispering, "I loved it, more than words can say. I had zero expectations, Ethan, but you've surprised me in a way I'll never forget," and as he leaned into her hug, a small smile of relief and happiness spreading across his face, she realized that this moment was not just about his talent or success, but about connection, trust, and the quiet revelation of his inner world, a bridge that had finally been built between mother and son. Later, as they walked out of the theater together, the night air cool against their skin, Irene could feel a new energy between them, a warmth that went beyond pride and admiration, something tender and emotional that spoke of mutual understanding, shared experience, and the unspoken bond that had grown stronger through this event, and she realized that their relationship had shifted, evolving into something richer, deeper, and more meaningful than she had ever imagined, where silence was replaced with communication, distance with intimacy, and expectation with wonder. Over the following days, Irene noticed changes not just in Ethan but in herself as well. She was more attentive, more open, more willing to share moments of her own heart, inspired by the honesty and creativity he had displayed, and she felt a renewed sense of connection as they began to talk about his music, the inspiration behind his lyrics, and the emotions that had driven him to compose each piece, conversations filled with laughter, reflection, and a gentle intimacy that strengthened the bond between them in subtle yet profound ways. She realized that sometimes the most powerful acts of love and connection are quiet, patient, and deeply personal, like the way Ethan had revealed his talent and heart through music, showing her who he truly was and giving her the gift of understanding, appreciation, and pride that no words alone could have conveyed, and she felt grateful, humbled, and amazed at the young man her son had become. At night, as she reflected on this showcase, Irene thought about the years of distance, the misunderstandings, and the times she had doubted whether she could reach him, and she understood that all of that had been necessary, in a way, for this moment to feel so profound, for the surprise, the revelation, and the connection to resonate so deeply within her, and she felt a quiet hope that their relationship would continue to grow, enriched by these shared experiences and strengthened by mutual trust, creativity, and love. The experience of watching Ethan perform, seeing him pour his heart into his music, and feeling the raw emotion he conveyed had left an indelible mark on her soul, and she knew that this was only the beginning. There were more songs, more stories, more moments of connection waiting to unfold, and Irene felt a sense of anticipation and excitement for the journey ahead, confident that the bond they had rediscovered and strengthened would continue to surprise, delight, and deeply move her in ways she could never have predicted. That night, as she tucked the journal back into her bag and watched Ethan place his sheet music carefully on the piano, she felt a wave of gratitude and joy, understanding that the showcase was not just a public performance but a private declaration, a heartfelt communication of his love, his vulnerability, and his trust, and she smiled, knowing that the quiet, reserved young man she had worried about for years had blossomed into someone remarkable, creative, and profoundly human, capable of touching hearts, including hers, in ways that would stay with her forever, and she felt a renewed sense of hope and excitement for the shared experiences that awaited them, ready to walk beside him as he explored the world with confidence, passion, and an open heart, knowing that the next chapter of their lives together would be filled with emotion, understanding, and the beauty of connection that had finally been revealed in full. In the weeks following the showcase, Irene and Ethan settled into a rhythm that felt entirely new, their relationship transforming from polite distance into a vibrant, heartfelt connection that neither of them had anticipated, and every day seemed to bring a fresh surprise, a new story, or a small moment that strengthened the bond between mother and son in ways Irene had once thought impossible, as they laughed together over small jokes, shared quiet breakfasts, and lingered in conversations that ranged from music to memories to dreams of the future, and Irene realized that the shy, reserved young man she had sometimes worried about had grown into someone whose heart, creativity, and emotional intelligence were extraordinary, and it was thrilling to witness him finally sharing it with the world and with her, the person he trusted most. Ethan's music continued to evolve, and Irene was there for every step, from watching him rehearse new pieces to listening to him hum melodies he was crafting, offering encouragement, asking questions, and quietly marveling at how deeply he felt, how much thought and emotion went into every note, every chord, and every lyric, and she found herself inspired by his dedication and passion, wanting to understand his inner world even more, feeling honored that he had chosen to include her in it, and realizing that the connection they now shared was rare, precious, and profoundly moving. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through the living room windows, Ethan handed her another journal, slightly smaller than the first, its cover soft, and the title read, "For Mom, Part 2, and Irene felt a thrill of anticipation as she gently opened it, discovering that it contained not just sketches and letters but reflections on life, growth, and love, some written as poetry, others as short stories, all infused with a gentle romanticism and a deep emotional intelligence that left her heart full and eyes misty. She realized that Ethan had not only been growing as a musician but also as a writer, as a thinker, and as someone capable of expressing feelings in ways that were both beautiful and accessible, and she felt a quiet pride knowing that she had been part of this journey from the very beginning. As she flipped through the pages, Irene noticed how thoughtfully he had captured moments of their shared past, from simple rainy day walks to quiet conversations over tea, showing her that he had always observed, remembered, and cherished these times, even when he hadn't spoken about them, and she understood that this was his way of saying, without words, that he loved her, valued her, and wanted her to see the world as he did, through his eyes and his heart, and the realization filled her with joy, gratitude, and a deep sense of connection that went beyond ordinary conversation or expression. The evenings became their special time, moments where they would sit together, sometimes at the piano, sometimes at the kitchen table, exploring new songs, reading passages from his journals, sharing laughter, sometimes silence, but always a quiet intimacy that felt rich and fulfilling. And Irene began to notice subtle changes in herself as well, a willingness to be more open, to express her own emotions, to let her pride, her love, and her admiration for Ethan show in ways she hadn't before. And she found herself anticipating these times with a sense of wonder, knowing that the experiences they were sharing were building memories that would last a lifetime. One night, while sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Ethan spoke quietly, "Mom, I want to write more songs about us, about everything we've been through, everything we've felt, everything we might feel in the future." And Irene's heart lifted because she realized that he wasn't just thinking about music or art, he was thinking about connection, about capturing the emotional essence of their relationship, and she felt honored, touched, and deeply moved that he wanted to do this with her in mind, a testament to the trust, love, and bond that had grown so quickly in such a short time. Over time, Ethan's music began to gain recognition locally, with people complimenting his lyrics, his melodies, and his ability to convey emotion. But to Irene, the true success was far more personal, the transformation in him, the way he had found his voice, and the way their relationship had blossomed into one of openness, understanding, and mutual admiration. A rare and beautiful dynamic that left her feeling both proud and humbled, grateful that she had not given up on him, that she had chosen patience over frustration, and that she had allowed him to reveal himself in his own time and his own way. As the days passed, they began to plan small creative projects together, brainstorming lyrics, themes, and ideas for performances, and Irene discovered that she enjoyed contributing, suggesting, and observing the evolution of his artistry, feeling a renewed sense of purpose and joy in being part of his world, while Ethan appreciated her perspective, her encouragement, and her emotional sensitivity, which guided him in subtle but important ways, and they both felt the quiet satisfaction of a partnership built on trust, love, and the mutual desire to share their lives and their creativity. One evening, as they were finishing dinner, Ethan reached across the table and said, "Mom, I think we're just getting started. There's so much more I want to share, so much more I want to do." And Irene smiled, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the room and the depth of her emotions, knowing that this was true not just for him but for both of them, that their journey together was unfolding in ways neither could have predicted, and that the surprises, joys, and emotional moments would continue to enrich their lives in countless ways. That night, as she tucked herself into bed, Irene reflected on the transformation of their relationship, the years of distance, the moments of worry, and the unexpected beauty that had emerged from his trust and creativity, and she realized that sometimes love requires patience, faith, and openness to surprises, that children have hidden depths and talents that may take time to emerge, and that when given the space and encouragement, they can astonish us with the breadth of their heart and soul. Just as Ethan had astonished her. In quiet moments throughout the following weeks, Irene caught herself smiling unexpectedly, thinking of the small ways Ethan expressed his affection, the music that filled their home, the poetry that made her laugh or cry, and the intimate conversations that reminded her of how much she had underestimated the emotional depth and creative brilliance of her son, and she knew that this bond, this renewed closeness, would shape not just their relationship but her understanding of patience, love, and family in a way she would carry forever. Together, they began imagining future performances, collaborations, and projects, not just as mother and son, but as partners in creativity, as two people who had discovered a shared emotional language and who cherished the act of connecting and creating together. And Irene felt a sense of fulfillment and wonder she hadn't known in years, a feeling of being part of something larger than herself, of witnessing her son bloom into a remarkable individual while also deepening their love and understanding for one another. The journey had begun with a simple journal, a quiet gesture, but it had grown into something monumental, a transformation of their bond, a discovery of talent, and an awakening of love, trust, and mutual admiration that neither Irene nor Ethan could have anticipated. And as they sat together on the porch again, the sky painted with the soft colors of dusk, Ethan handed her a small sketchbook and said, "Mom, This is just for us, our memories, our stories, our music," and Irene felt tears of joy fill her eyes, knowing that the surprises were not over, that the journey of connection, creativity, and heartfelt expression would continue to unfold, and that together, they would write the next chapters of their lives, filled with love, laughter, music, and a bond so strong and genuine that it would leave a lasting mark on both of their hearts, proving that sometimes the most beautiful transformations come from patience, trust, and the courage to reveal one's true self, and that the greatest surprises can emerge from the hearts we thought we already knew.